Good afternoon, everybody. So first of all, I want to pray Lord Dhanvantari so that my thoughts, my words, and my action is not against the science, not against the common belief of the people. Just like Kalidasa told, Vagartha vivasam praktau vagartha pratipattaye. So whatever I speak with the blessings of Lord Dhanvantari should be truth. So with this prayer to Lord Dhanvantari, am I audible to all? So with this prayer to Lord Dhanvantari, I wish to present my topic today. I want to make one correction. I have suggested to the organizers also, but still it has come into the program, saying as with reference to Ayurvedic principles, it becomes a very big, huge this one. That's why I suggested them. I will restrict myself to clinical documentation in rheumatoid arthritis with special reference to Amavata. So please make that correction. And also, all of you have these hand notes given to you. There are a lot of things looked into. So I have sent them a written text of my presentation or a paper, which is from page 13 to 20. But what I find there is the references are not added there. There are about 50 or 55 references which is quoted in the text. But if you look, there are no references in that. Please excuse me for that. It will be with the organizers or it is with me, because referencing is very, very important. Similarly, there are some other papers given to you, which is a part of my presentation. And in that also there is one a case report form which we have developed and on which we are working on for the Amavata. In that also the pages are all mixed up here and there. So the pages are not in order. Please excuse me for the same. And if you want its correct version, you may get it from, or you can get it from me. So please note these things. So I will be going in 4 different sections. My first few slides will be on clinical documentation and medical practice. And the next section will be clinical documentation in Ayurveda. The third section will be clinical documentation in rheumatoid arthritis with special reference to Amavata. Please remember, I am restricting to only Amavata here. And then International Clinical Research Program, Okayama University, Okayama, Japan. So with these 4 different areas, we will be proceeding our presentation. Now I was thinking before preparing this, which quote I should show first to start with my talk. So many, some 50-60 quotes I was going through. At the end, which appealed me a lot, is this quote, which is maybe just 5 or 6 days back, as all of you are knowing about the US Health Reform Bill, which is being debated and which is being accepted and which is going to be a law in the US now. And in one of the speech, the President Obama referred these words: breakthrough in medical research take far more than the occasional flash of brilliance. As important as that can be, progress takes time. It takes hard work. It can be unpredictable. It can require a willingness to take risks and going down some blind alleys occasionally. Very important, which appealed me, is figuring out what doesn't work is sometimes as important as figuring out what is or what works. All of this needs the support of government. That is, of course, is his part. So this appealed me. That's why I am projecting this slide first to you with highlighting that point. Figuring out what doesn't work is very important for us in Ayurveda. And most of our future work, we should sort out those things which are not applicable today, which are not working today, or which are not true today, and we should try to find out which is more authentic and real Ayurveda for our future development of Ayurveda. Similarly, there is another quote which comes from critics argue that there is a disturbing lack of evidence regarding the effectiveness of many of these unconventional treatments. However, it is not evidence is lacking. It simply is a different kind of evidence. I would point out that many practices that doctors engage in are not based on controlled trials or tests, and that does not necessarily make those practices bad. So many practices might not have gone to the clinical trial, randomization and all those things, but it do work and practitioners do practice it. The controlled clinical trials does not tell the doctor what he or she would like to know, not how to treat the average patient, since nobody has an average patient, but how to pick the right anti-arthritic for Mr. Jones or Mr. Smith. This is the words from the father of the clinical RCTs. So Sir Austin Bradford Hill, who first proposed the RCTs and randomized studies and one of the key evidence for medical practice, and he tells in his one of the presentations about the role of RCTs. But why I presented this one or two slide is, in the morning I was hearing very eminent Ayurvedic clinicians about their experience, about their practice, about their in-depth knowledge in the science of Ayurveda. But what is important is, if I am a clinician, my main concern is my patient. Whatever I wanted to do, I want to do with the patient, because making that patient happy and free from his suffering is the main concern. But if I am an academician, if I am a researcher, or if I am a scientist, my concern is not only the patient. My concern is the science. What we are documenting for the sake of the science, what we are contributing for the sake of the science. So the trust shifts. And today I am standing on a platform and in an institution where this role is demanded by me every day, every moment, every second. I am in a medical institution where Ayurveda is always looked with the squinted eye. But we have to struggle to convince patients, not only patients, also to our fellow workers, saying that there is enough evidence or documentations in Ayurveda also, so that we can accept whatever practice we are doing in our day-to-day practice. Most of the time, every day I feel my prana is allopathic medicine, because I am working in that. My atma is Ayurveda. So in that environment we are working, and we are facing lot of challenges every day. And some of these presentations which I am going to do is an outcome of those challenges which we are facing, and an effort from our own side. I don't say everything we have done, an effort from our own side to face these challenges for present day, also for the future. Now every one of you know there is a theoretical framework accepted, and it is presented by Donovan, where any healthcare quality is measured, assessed and approved. There are three elements in that. One is structure, the second is process, and the third is outcome. Whatever the healthcare may be, whether it is Ayurveda, homeopathy, Siddha or whatever it may be, any healthcare needs to be looked with these three elements. What are the structures, what are the processes adopted, and what is the outcome of that process. This is universally accepted everywhere in the world, and we should not run away from this, concept and this format. And many of you may be already knowing in 2007, WHO CRO coding workshop was done to develop guidelines for medical record and clinical documentation. And everywhere this is followed nowadays. And Ayurveda also need to follow it. We are not separate from that common thinking, common approach. We also need to, I will not go detail in that, but some of the important informations. One of the important thing in that guidelines is who, what, when, why and how about the clinical documentation. Not only for Ayurveda, generally for any healthcare approach is concerned, who has to document, what has to document, when it has to be documented, why it has to be documented, and how it has to be documented. These are the key elements described in that guidelines. A detailed guidelines is there in each of this, which I am not going through. If you see, these are there, who once again explains who are all in the care of the patient. Doctors, nurses, patients, other health professionals, all they are involved in that documentation, and what they have to document is also has been listed there, their role there. Similarly, what has to be documented, all aspects of patient care, collaboration and shared responsibilities. I will not go for that. Everything is there in this one which is given to you. And when it has to be documented, these are also very, very important. So everything should be then and then. You cannot document something later. Something has happened, a Vata patient came or a Hama Vata patient came, you gave some treatment and had some observations and outcomes. So you should document at that time, at that moment. Later things will not be accepted. And why and how? The guidelines are there for each of this, and anyone can go through that WHO CRO guidelines, which is available on the internet also. So there are some key points, strategies for quality documentation practice. First thing is an organizational support is necessary. A leadership is necessary. I think Rudra team is going ahead with these things. Resources, professional development, communication systems, responsive to change, and also the purpose should be very clear in this documentation. One important thing why documentation is necessary is communication. It is a communication between doctor to doctor, doctor to another professional of other system or other field, doctor to patient, doctor to legal authorities. So many other communications are available. And then it's accountability. So whatever we do, how much accountable it is. See, just before our inaugural function started, the chief guest, his name is Bhaktavasalam, he was sitting nearby me, and he was asking me one question. He spoke something on the stage, but he was asking one question. Doctor, please tell me honestly, how much successful Ayurveda is in treating this disease? What answer you will give? Everyone, you know why he asked that question, but what answer he will give? I think Dr. Vasudevan in his last slide, after speaking all the things, last slide he spoke to something. So evidence is not there. Proof is not there. So what is very important is accountability of our practice is also very important. And then legislative requirements, of course it is very much necessary in future days now. And quality improvement, how we will improve our quality unless we don't have something documented? We cannot improve it. And research, of course, no research can develop without documentation. So that is why in a little later slide you will come the real situation. So if we have to have a good research, means good documentation skills are necessary. Proper documentation skills are necessary. Unless each Vaidya knows how to document his practice or this one, there is no research. Forget about other things. There is no research possible. And funding, If you want to go for fund and all those things, once again they will ask what is document you have. So these slides I will not give, the same thing is explained in this. I will. So there are three principles here in documentation, guiding principles. One principle is the documentation should be comprehensive and complete. It's a comprehensive and complete record. Clinical staff have a professional obligation to maintain documentation that is clear, concise and comprehensive as an accurate and a true record of care. True record of care. Many times as a clinician, patient comes to me, this is my experience also, says that I have knee joint pain, and then I will give him, okay, some Gugulu or Rasnadika Kashayam or something, but he will go from the other side and he will have also a brufen also. This will never document our practice in a proper way. Similarly, guiding principle 2, patient-centered and collaborative. Most of our documents, because all of us we are working for the patients and for the sufferers, so it should be patient suffering and it should collaborate. One thing which is very difficult, I have experienced in 26 or 28 years of my professional working in the department in these things, it is very difficult to build an Ayurvedic team. Unless we work like a team and collaboratively do something, it is very, very difficult. Every one of we should understand this. The modern medicine is only 150 or 200 years of its history. Ayurveda has, we say, more than 5,000, 10,000 years of history. But even with 150 years of his existence or 200 years of existence, modern medicine rules the world today. Ayurveda even not rules India, where is its own original place. Why? This question every one of you should ask. And documentation is patient-centered, patient-focused, collaborative and appropriate to the setting in which the care is provided and the purpose for which the information is recorded. The third guiding principle is ensure and maintain confidentiality. This is also a part of every clinical practice. So every documentation also should have an element of confidentiality in that. Documentation system, including electronic systems, will ensure and maintain patient confidentiality in all care settings. In order to go in detail, I think I saw this paper in Dr. Ram Manohar's cabin also yesterday. I think he has put that in his cabin also. So this is what are different elements which goes into the medical documentation or clinical documentation. It should be clear, it should be concise, it should be complete, contemporary, consecutive, correct, comprehensive and collaborative, patient-centered and confidential. These are the various elements which are very much important in terms of clinical documentation. With this slide, this is my first part of communicating you the requirement, need and necessity, and the future of Ayurveda depends on the documentation, because unless we know what is documentation, how it has to be done, what is the requirement of international standards, so we are not going ahead anywhere. That's why first part I concentrate a little. There are a lot many things to tell, but I concentrate only on these points. Now let us come to the most controversial area, documentation in Ayurveda. You see, as per the Ayush report 2007, there are 240 Ayurvedic colleges, 60 plus postgraduate institutions, 75,000 plus students, 10,000 plus faculty members, 2,400 plus Ayurveda hospitals, 43,750 beds, maybe only on the paper sometimes, and 4,53,000 plus registered practitioners. This is not my data. This is the data presented in the Ayush, which is available on the internet. If you open that report, PDF version is there. You have this figures in that report. Please open a PubMed. Please open a PubMed. It is a very common search engine. There are so many other search engines. You may get lost when you go for Ayurveda, but at least PubMed is very common search engine. Please open in PubMed and put word Ayurveda. You will get only 462 citations. 462 citations. Ayurveda I am talking, with the word Ayurveda. Of course, 60 or 70% of that simply some juggling papers related to some alternative, complementary, herbal, these things, all those things. What real Ayurveda, maybe only few counting one. But go and put a search word with Ayurveda and clinical studies and Ayurveda. You will get only some 4 or 5 papers. Some 4 or 5 papers. I searched today morning, because this is RA related workshop. If you put Ayurveda and rheumatoid arthritis, or rheumatoid arthritis in the Ayurveda search engine, you will get only 10 citations. Only 10 citations. And go through that 10 titles. There are only 2 which is related to Ayurveda. Others are simply one Ayurveda word is there somewhere here or there. And go and search, remove that Amavata or this one from that. Only rheumatoid arthritis you keep there. Only rheumatoid arthritis, you have 1,01,576 citations. So Ayurveda, 10,000 years old, only 10 citations. Modern science or allopathy, what we talk, only 150 or 200 years old, 1,01,576 citations. And in that, about 10,000 plus are clinical studies, RCTs, 10,000. So this is the situations where we are in terms of documentation is concerned. So that is why I also, if it hurts someone, please excuse me. But I have to speak the truth. That's why I first told Vagarthayo Samprakto Vagartat Pratipatte. So I have to speak the truth. But if it hurts, please excuse me. Non-qualified prescribers. Even today we do not know who are Ayurvedic practitioners. Whether those who come from Ayurvedic institutions get a degree, BAMS or something, or whether who comes from some traditional Vaidya family and practices Ayurveda and these things, or whether some beautician or these things who does some Ayurveda massage and something, they are Ayurveda practitioners. It is very difficult to quantify who is a qualified Ayurvedic practitioners. Even if we take BAMS or the degree given by CME is the qualified practitioners, then there are so many other people who do Ayurveda practice without. You can get Dashamularishta in a Pan Bida shop. You can go and get a Dashamularishta in a Pan Bida shop. You can get Chavanaprasha in some food stores or these things. So no one knows. There is great, this one, non-qualified prescribers. And then lack of product standards. There is, today you give Ashokaristam, it worked very well. The same patient comes next time, you give Ashokaristam, that doesn't work. Or otherwise, you give Ashokaristam of AVP, it works in some way. You give Ashokaristam of Vaidyanath, it works in some other way. There is a absolute lack of standards for the Ayurvedic medicines. Undeclared ingredients. Please tell me, today morning or tomorrow morning you open a newspaper and sit, you will see there are 10 advertisements in Ayurveda saying that this is a 100% cure for diabetes. How much advertisement you want? Actually I wanted to put the exam scanned input, but I avoided that. If I am an authority to this one, first thing I will do is we should ban advertising Ayurvedic products in the newspapers like this one for this one. So scientists are struggling day and night to get a product for diabetes, but an Ayurvedic group or Ayurvedic community or Ayurvedic Vaidya or Ayurvedic this one, within overnight brings the diabetic medicines and says that it is 100% cure for diabetes. Okay. So Fourth thing is non-disclosure of usage. So there is no such a secrecy is there regarding the Ayurvedic products, and you can get that product only with some person. You cannot get that anywhere else. I can expand it so many things, but please let us know that this is a problem in our field. Non-reporting of poisoning or adverse drug reactions. Everyone believes that Ayurvedic drug is safe. You can use it like anything, and nothing will happen. I am now searching and making a database where in the published this one, how many adverse reactions or side effects and dangerous side effects are reported, not with an Ayurvedic product, but something which we use in Ayurveda. There are hundreds. Please note that the vacha which we are using, which say that it is medhya, it is these things, and in some colleges they have started as swarana vacha, that vacha, this vacha. You go to some European country, you will be immediately arrested and put into jail because vacha cannot be used there. I am not saying that they are doing right. What I am telling is we have not documented the use of vacha in a proper way, so that people will understand that it is a proper medicines used in Ayurveda with the proper indications, proper prescription, and these things. No standard protocol for diagnosis. Just now we had this one also. So no standard protocols are developed for any disease for the teacher to teach students or students to practice it when they are becoming a practitioners. No proper protocols are developed for any diagnosis of any disease, and usage of non-Ayurvedic products without informing the patient. This is a great this one. If you meet some allopathic doctor, he will say that Ayurvedic churna contains steroids, or Ayurvedic doctors put some chemical medicines in that, and it is true also. I have analyzed some powders brought by the patient saying that it is good for rheumatoid arthritis, these things. When we have analyzed, about 70 to 78% of the churna contains very high steroids. Remember, we cannot believe that. Very high steroids, and they are being sold as Ayurvedic medicines. So here we stand now. You know, many of you know the Andagaja Nyaya. So everyone has his own explanation of Ayurveda, or different people describe Ayurveda in their own different ways. Like a blind man explaining elephant in his own world and in his own way. So this is the situations where we stand today. So that is why before understanding the documentation in Ayurveda, at least let us know what are the key points of Ayurvedic health care, and that should be the fundamentals of our clinical practice. First thing is, the first step in any approach to Ayurvedic health care or these things in clinical practice is the Prakriti. So understanding of Prakriti, a little later I will come regarding the Prakriti also. If Dr. Ram Kumar is there somewhere, we had this discussion earlier also. So first thing which is very important in Ayurvedic practice is to understand the Prakriti, an individual nature. And then of course next step is to determine the Vikriti. Unless one knows what is the Prakriti, there is no way defining Vikriti. And in Ayurveda they have used their own words, dosha vaishamya or something like that. And then if there is Vikriti is there, that needs to be corrected. Many times nature only will correct. You need not do anything. You can only give him some simple hints. Okay, don't eat this, or take rest, or do some exercise or something like that. Nature only will, 99% of the time, nature only will correct. Maybe only 1% or 2% some additional help may be necessary. Because that is what is called as Swabhava Paramavada. That is, the body is set in a default mode that it will automatically go back to a healthy condition. In computer language they use default mode. You see, even though if something goes wrong in our body, it will automatically go back to his original Swabhava Paramavada. Many of you, I am not going to teach you Ayurveda as a class here. And then establish balance, that is Dhatu Samya. Once again, this word I will explain a little bit later. and then follow Swastha Vratta. So if you have to tell some guidance on the Swastha Vratta, means all these steps are also necessary. So these are some of the key points of Ayurvedic health care. And if documentation do not speak anything about this, I don't think that it becomes an Ayurvedic documentation. And many of you know that Ahara, Nidra, Brahmacharya, Trayopastamba, all words we are hearing and by hearting in our first year, second year classes and all those things. Diet, drugs, medicines, these things all we do. What is important to know, linking factor between food, drinks, medicine, activities and man is guna. Many of us in the morning they spoke about the Shita, Ushna, all different words. But we know that these are the linking factors. And in body, specific gunas in groups, they are termed as tridoshas. Like Tatra Ruksho Lagu Shita Khara Sukshma Chalona is a group of vata, group of guna indicating vata. So similarly, group of gunas indicating pitta, group of gunas indicating kapha. And precise measurement of tridosha in physiological level, pathological level and in treatment level is inevitable. Guna transformation for better understanding of pharmacology. So this is a lecture which more related to the pharmacology, but what I wanted to understand here is, unless we have documented the guna or the doshas and its effect and whatever we have given its effect on doshas or these things, how we are going to document Ayurveda? How it will become a documentation for Ayurveda? It will only become a documentation of herbal medicine. Tomorrow you give some herb and say that ginger or turmeric, it is very good for rheumatoid arthritis, documented this, but it is not Ayurveda. Ginger and turmeric are not used according to its anti-arthritic activity or anti-inflammatory activity or anti-this activity in Ayurveda. They are used with a different understanding, Vatahara or Pittahara or Kaphahara. Ayurvedic pharmacology is entirely different field. Each cell, of course, let us not go deep into that. In simple words, every cellular activity is also dominated and controlled by tridoshas. Every cellular activity. And unless tridoshas are understood and documented in a proper way, I am sure Ayurveda, the next slide will show you that. So if Ayurveda documentation means it should be related to the doshas, tridoshas. And a little bit extending to that is what is called as Doshadatumala Siddhanta, or because they are all revolved under the Tridosha only. So that is why main trust in Ayurvedic documentation should be Tridoshas, and action of drug should be also on Tridoshas. Diagnosis and management of diseases also is based on Tridoshas. Every science has its own approach, and unless we approach it in its own traditional thinking and this one, Ayurveda, the first slide I showed you, Dhanvantari and this one, I always communicated two things with that slide to some of my foreign visitors, guests and these things. The first thing is the divinity, philosophy and spirituality which is projected in Ayurveda. The Dhanvantari as a lord of Ayurveda, more important is the divinity, spirituality and philosophy which is very much innately connected with the practice of medicine. Whether it is Ayurveda, allopathy, it is there. Whether they speak or not speak, it is different things. But unless these things are there, medicine cannot be practiced. The second thing in the other side what I was showing is the Sanskrit language. Because if there is no Sanskrit language, I don't think we can explain Ayurveda or we can understand Ayurveda in any way. We can communicate something, but not to the extent what Sanskrit language can understand Ayurveda. Now let us go a little. This is just to give a background what is required for a documentation in Ayurveda. On that field, in my department, in our department, we are working since last 20-25 years with various help from different clinicians, different biomedical sciences and these things to look into these aspects. Some of things which have connected to Amavata. That is why regarding RA, rheumatoid arthritis, many things has been told in the morning Even the doctor from the Western medicine, allopathic medicine also gave you some hints. But some important points I have to highlight here. RA is a complex clinical and immunological disease. Assessment of patient clinical status is challenging. There is no single gold standard measure for assessment. Thus, pooled indexes are employed. Quantitative measures have led to major advances in prognosis and management of Ayurveda. Doctor told in the morning, and I also agree. I think today and in future you cannot see patients with so much mutilated joints and these things, because so much progress and development has taken place in the treatment of rheumatoid arthritis. I was in, that will come later, I was in Japan and I saw maybe about 50 or 60 patients in a very famous rheumatological hospital, so healthy, so this one, by treating, of course, those treatment, I think doctor has just referred there, what we call it as newer biological agents, which one medicine will cost lakhs of rupees, or one dose will cost lakhs of rupees for our patients. That is a different issue. We are not talking about the economic and other aspects when we talk about the documentation. So, but we should know, as I have seen it from my childhood, patient suffering from rheumatoid arthritis only has to satisfy with some painkillers or maybe a little steroid, but that is not the situation today. Today, I think an allopathic rheumatologist will boldly say that I can arrest the disease, I can reverse disease. I have seen some patients, X-rays and these things, even the bone erosions have been reversed. This has been documented. I am not saying something, this one has been documented, the papers are there. But it is only for 50%. The patients responding to the newer biological elements, different kind of are there. They have found that only 50% of patients are benefited. What about the other 50% of the patients? Still they are there. We will look into that a little later. And then quantitative use of assessment tools not only improves outcome, but now is required by the government and their party, third party payer system. Now insurance systems, all these things are necessary. You see, long back, 87, American College of Rheumatology developed the criteria for diagnosing rheumatoid arthritis. Every one of you know the criteria and all those things. I need not go for that. What I wanted to say is, at that time the trust was on clinical diagnosis and a little bit basic like ESR or these things. That time, but now it is not trust on the only clinical diagnosis. There are highly advanced laboratory diagnostic methods available. Affordability is not the issue. But to document the case of RA, there are highly documented lab investigations are available, and which are the newer guidelines have adopted that. So this is what I was telling. Different markers are available for the diagnosis of various kinds of autoimmune diseases and these things. I am not going to that because I am not talking about these things, but these are necessary to connect me for my other aspects. And this is the, you see, this is what I wanted to show you. There is no proper guidelines or a flow chart how we have to approach to a patient of a disease. Maybe rheumatoid arthritis, maybe vata rakta, maybe amavata, but there should be a flow chart. There should be a proper approach for those diseases which every clinician can practice approach in a proper way. It's not there with us. That is why every one of us we are finding difficulty. Even today we are struggling whether we should say vata rakta for rheumatoid arthritis or amavata for rheumatoid arthritis. South one people have one belief, north one other people have other belief. These are all happen because there is no proper guidance developed. So RA therapy is not my this one. Okay. So in the assessment tools, even today allopathic system doesn't say that they have a cure for rheumatoid arthritis. Even today they are not telling. And whatever they say is trying to either arrest the disease or, if possible, reverse the disease process. And for doing that, you require some assessment tools. You should prove it by various assessment tools. So many different kind of assessment tools are available in the practice. and which are very simple and everyone can use it. But one of the thing is what is called as health assessment questionnaire. You see, there are three important things: health assessment questionnaire HAQ, quality of life questionnaires QOL, and patient reported outcome PRO. These three words, please remember: HAQ, QOL, and PRO. These three should come together. These three should come together and they should match. So the health assessment questionnaire, quality of life, and patient reported outcome. You might have treated rheumatoid arthritis, is ESR may be strictly normal, and this one are joint count is completely this one. But if patient is experiencing severe anorexia, that is not a good treatment for that patient. So there are various elements which are assessed, and there are different kind of HFQs are available. But why I project this is, we are working on this. You see, in Ayurveda we have according to Ayurveda, any disease is vikaro dosha vaishamyam. Dosha vaishamyam. I told you in the beginning. Then what is relief or cure or outcome? Dhatu samyam arogata. So what we have to look at is dhatu samya. Have we achieved dhatu samya in a patient, given patient? Not have we cured the patient is not important. Have we achieved dhatu samya in that patient is very important. And dhatu samya cannot be 100% at many times. It could be 20%, 50%, 80%, 100%. So that is why what we are working, only that element I have not brought here projected, because it is still in a property which is in our mind, which on which we are working. We are developing one thing which is called as Ayurvedic health assessment questionnaire, basically developed on the basis of understanding these health assessment questionnaires of the modern medicine. But the base is 11 or 12 criteria given by Charaka in Vimanasthana 8 chapter 39th sloka, where he has given how we will define dhatu samya. And we have to develop a scoring system for that. We are doing that, a scoring system for that, and that scoring system should be twofold: physician's assessment of that health assessment questionnaire, patient assessment of health assessment questions. Two elements we are developing in that, and then we are trying to match what is the outcome of the treatments. So this is a simple HAQ. As you see, there are simple questions are there. It's not important for us. These are joint counts. Sorry. Okay, that is the joint count which is commonly done in the modern medicine. So now let me come to the clinical documentation in terms of Amamata, because why we have taken Amamata to study, and in relation to rheumatoid arthritis, there are some data I will show you. Because as you see in the morning, eminent doctors have speaking about the Vata Shonita, and I believe 99.9% of the participants here will believe that it is, because that is taught in the educational system, and they are carrying out in the same thing. So that's why I am not going to debate whether that is correct, this is not this one. Whether you say Vata Shonita, well, document it. Whether you say Amavata, well, document it. Whatever it may be. So, but commonly two views are there, whether it is Vata Rakta or Amavata. So that is why in our department we are trying to keep every document in a proper way. Now with the computers we have digitalized documentations. Sorry. This is last 5 years patients visited our department. Every year about 5,000 plus patients who have consulted the department in the KMC, and this is the new patients out of that 5,000 patients. These are about new patients. Every year they come to Ayurveda department, and I made a search. So this is only for every year we are developing something called as top 10, which I display in my department. What is the top 10 clinical conditions we treat in our department? In our department, I am not talking any other things. So this is the top 10 of 2009. So starting from top 1, Sandhyavata and Staulya are the two clinical. There are 198 entries of clinical conditions in our data. Out of 198 different clinical conditions, we have taken the top 10. So top third is Amavata in this 2009. Top third. So Amavata stands as top third. I think last year it was top 2. It has become top 3 in 2009. And I made a search for last 5 years, those patients, Amavata or Vatarakta, whatever is diagnosed by clinicians, the clinician is independent to diagnose by in his own way. And we searched this one. We see that from 2000, last 5 years, we had 81 patients of Amavata and 28 patients of Vatarakta diagnosed in our center. And out of that, I tried to match how many of those patients are proved diagnosis of RA. When I say proved diagnosis means at least 3 criteria are there. Either RA should be positive, CCP should be positive, and the ACR criteria, whatever clinicians are following, this should be there. So try to search how much of these patients have RA positive. You see, in the Vata group, we have only 3 patients who have come